Welcome to Setting the Edge podcast and video show, week 3 of the NFL. Here we are, boys. We're ready to get into this. I'm joined with my mans, Ryan Zamichelli. You can find him on Twitter at with an A, Great Zambino. I am Vaughn R16, Ronnie Vaughn on Twitter. And today we have a special guest, Eric. How do you pronounce your last name, man? I don't want to fuck it up.
Rasmussen.
Rasmussen. He is a contributor for the Draftkings Playbook, and as well, he is a DFS reporter, former poker player who loves all things sports, and he's quite the guy you want to talk to when it comes to fantasy sports strategy. How are we tonight on this Friday night?
I'm great over here.
That's what I like to hear.
Never been better.
Never been better. So getting excited for the weekend. Saturday is for the boys tomorrow. Big college day, and then hop right into the NFL, which is what we are here to discuss. And we're going to kick it off running down the entire slate of the Sunday games. That's going to be the main focus point here. We won't be including the Monday night game because we already know what's happening with that Monday night game. It's going to get weird. So starting off here, we have the 1-1 Arizona Cardinals on the road, heading up to Buffalo, 0-2. The line currently is Arizona favored by 4, and I see the over-under sitting here at 47. Ryan, kick us off here. What are some focal points that you want to talk about this game in terms of daily fantasy sports, DraftKings and FanDuel, as well as season-long teams, and if you have any gambling perspective here?
With this game, what I'm mainly looking at is it's an interesting situation because you have a very, very talented Arizona team going into Buffalo cross country, and they're taking on a team that's definitely been on the downs lately in Buffalo. So that's probably the reason why this line is sitting at only -4. Maybe aside from some big guys in Vegas putting money on Buffalo to try to put more money on Arizona later to move the line for them. The main guys I'm looking at for DFS are David Johnson and Larry Fitzgerald out of this game. I just think that David Johnson's a guy that, regardless of the situation, you can look at him because he's going to contribute through the air as well as on the ground. And then Larry Fitzgerald has just been Mr. Reliable. Larry Fitzgerald is a promise week in and week out. In FanDuel, as well as I think especially on DraftKings where you're getting full point PPR, and Larry Fitzgerald just sees a massive targets every week. And then guy who I will never touch with a 10-foot pole, especially in this situation, is Sammy Watkins, if he even plays, because he's dealing with injuries pretty much all season. And he's going to have to go up against Patrick Peterson this week if he plays.
Yeah, I agree with you there. The main target for me in this game will be David Johnson. I like him over D'Angelo Williams in this situation. You're saving a little bit of cap, and I think it's a nice pivot away. Everyone has seen the amount of production and targets, and not targets specifically, but carries that D'Angelo Williams has gotten from Pittsburgh. I think a perfect pivot from him is David Johnson in this game. You can't go wrong with Larry Fitz. He's seen, I want to say, the most amount of red zone targets in the NFL thus far. And you're only getting him about, 7.5 on FanDuel. He's Mr. Reliable, as I said. I don't really see this game in Buffalo getting too disgusting, meaning, a Carson Palmer can't get anything going on offense, and Buffalo is just holding him down on defense. Eric, what is your thought from this game? What kind of perspective and angles are you taking?
Well, I guess I'm definitely all over Arizona. The line for the game should be a lot higher in my eyes, but also hearing, the fact that Watkins isn't going to play, I just don't see Buffalo moving the ball at all, really. Huge fan of David Johnson, and obviously I caught what you're saying. On some of the sites, David Johnson's the most expensive running back, and the other sites, D'Angelo is. Either site, whatever the site is, I'm probably paying up to whoever's the most expensive because people are probably going to go with the lower one just to try to save a few hundred. Mm-hmm. So I'm a big fan of going with them, the highest one, but there's a number of places where I actually have them both together. So
pairing them up, yeah, I definitely don't hate that at all. Are there any other wide receiver targets you're looking at in this game? We know that Sammy Watkins is kind of hurt, and everyone loves Fitz. Is there anyone maybe you take a flyer on in a GPP here?
Well, I'm definitely going to take some flyers on Michael Floyd. Watching Buffalo's corners get beat deep was, kind of surprising because they're supposed to be pretty solid. Right. So, I'm looking for Floyd. Floyd usually ends up with 3 to 4 targets deep along the sideline. So really all it takes is one of those to come through and pay off. So.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Ryan, have anything to finish us off?
No, I feel like we touched on pretty much everything.
Yeah, I have one last thing. If this line is actually dictating anything about Buffalo, the offense is going to come from Shady McCoy, and I wouldn't be surprised if this game is close, he's in the top 10% of winnings on like FanDuel and DraftKings. But in a cash game perspective, I'm not really looking at him too much of a risk in my opinion. Moving on to the next game on the 1:00 slate here, the Oakland Raiders sitting at 1-1 on the road, heading on over to the Tennessee Titans, also 1-1. Right now, I believe this game is at a pick'em, and the over/under here is set at 47, just like the last game. Eric, you want to kick us off here? What do you like from this game?
I have to kind of reevaluate Tennessee here. I got to, I was big on Delaney Walker, and now hearing that he's pretty much barely practiced, probably gonna have to be going away from him, which means probably going with a lot of DeMarco Murray out of the backfield. I know he's not getting a lot of carries, but those targets got to go somewhere, and it's not going to go to Anthony Fasano.
Right.
That's for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Absolutely. What are your thoughts on Marcus Mariota?
I love Mariota. There's a lot of people that, I don't know, they just refuse to play him. I love the upside thanks to his scrambling ability. Doesn't really seem like he's going to be a guy that's going to throw for 3 or 4 touchdowns in a week, but throwing for 2 and maybe running, maybe getting 40, 50 yards as well kind of makes up for that extra passing touchdown that you don't get out of him.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. If Delaney Walker is out, is there anyone in specific that you would be targeting?
I will have a lot of Tajay Sharp.
Yep.
I don't really know much. I don't really see them expanding to anybody else. I know Rashard Matthews is somebody they brought in to be a number 1 receiver, but he hasn't really, gotten on the same page with Mariota. So it's really Murray and Tajay Sharp for me.
Yep. Ryan, what are you taking away from this game?
In this game, what I'm really surprised about, to be honest, big picture, is how many people don't realize how bad Oakland's secondary has been. Week 1, you saw that shootout they had with New Orleans. And then last week, I was really big on the Matt Ryan, Julio Jones stack, and it came through for me. And it was surprisingly low owned. I was expecting way more chalk there than there actually was. And I wouldn't be surprised again if this week people sleep on maybe like a Mariota, Tajay Sharp stack where it would have less upside, but it would also be a lot cheaper than the Julio Jones, Matt Ryan stack. There's, like Eric touched on with the lack of targets for Delaney Walker, because if he's not able to play, they have to go somewhere, and it seems like it's either going to be to Tajay Sharp or DeMarco Murray out of the backfield. DeMarco Murray on DraftKings the past couple of weeks hasn't been as highly owned as I would have anticipated, or as highly priced, quite frankly. Now his price is up to 6.3 thousand over on DraftKings. But with the full point PPR, that's really been saving his scores, really, with the 7 and 5 targets respectively in the first 2 weeks of the season, putting up over 20 points each week. A lot of people are scared of that Oakland front seven, as you and I have discussed a lot, Ronnie. Mm-hmm. And it just hasn't been what has been hyped up to be. It has Khalil Mack and Bruce Irvin on the edges, but it doesn't have the interior pieces and then the linebackers to back that up. So I'm really looking at, I consider Marcus Mariota in my cash game lineups when I'm building them. And then on DraftKings, I'm really looking at DeMarco Hard, and then Tajay Sharp, of course, is a big option, a little bit lower price, especially on DraftKings. I think he's 4.9-ish. He's mid to high fours.
Hasn't gone up yet at all. Hasn't really gone up at all on DraftKings.
That's surprising to me. And so he's definitely going to get a lot of attention from me there.
Yeah, it really sucks with this news of Delaney Walker coming out, because he really hasn't shown what he can do for us yet this season. I was really hoping for that to come this game. But now with the hamstring bugging him again, he's not going to be nearly as good. He'll probably play, so he'll probably maybe get 4 to 5 catches, 50, 60 yards, but I don't think the touchdown upside is there if he's hobbled. I like Tajay Sharp, but I'm just being wary of him. I don't think I'd have a high roster percentage necessarily for him. But I am looking at Mariota in cash games because I'm not a huge fan of paying up at quarterback necessarily. Although currently my lineup right now has one of the more expensive ones. I usually like to pay down and then pay up on the guys that just know they're going to ball out. You pay for your AB, you pay for your Julio Jones. But really from this game, the Oakland Raiders, I don't think you can go wrong with Amari Cooper. He's 7.7 here. I know Tennessee plays a slower ball game, but Derek Carr has not been getting hit at all this year. You and I were talking about this. They have the second-rated offensive line this season. He's only been, I want to say, sacked once or twice maybe. He's got a lot of time back there. And you would think this would bode well for Murray, but they're doing a running back by committee kind of thing until they figure it out. And I think this is great for Cooper in cash, honestly, 7.7. If you have that 200 extra and don't want to go Fitz, I think Amari Cooper is perfectly fine. You can put them both in, I think. And in the GPP, you can always toss in Crabtree. I have no problem with that. On the Tennessee side of things, as a Patriots fan, I saw a little bit of Rashard Matthews last year, and I don't think he's very talented at all. I don't think Mariota's looking for him yet. And until further notice, I'm staying completely away from him. Tajay Sharp is the only guy I would roster, more so on DraftKings than FanDuel due to the price. He's about 5.8 on FanDuel, which isn't too bad, but I'm not really leaning at him right now, especially if I have Mariota, and I'm not going to go both of them in cash games. Having your hands tied up with the Titans is a scary thought. But I do like DeMarco Murray, though. He's getting the targets. They're not working in Derrick Henry significantly yet, which is fine with me. But DeMarco Murray, he's shown a lot, he's a solid running back thus far. He only ran the ball like 12 times, but he's 7 targets, caught all of them. That's huge, especially on DraftKings. And FanDuel, it's fine too. And at 7.7, that's really not a bad price. I'm also not a huge fan of paying big time up at running back. But he's definitely a consideration for me. Let's move on to the next game. We got the Cleveland Browns 0-2. Moving on down to Miami, also 0-2. Right now, I see the line is Miami -10. And the over-under here is set low, 42. Ryan, what do you got on the Browns and Fins here?
In this game, I know this is going to be a lot of people's survivor pick. Not going to lie, I'm considering it. Pretty much everybody and their mother's looking at the Browns with a third-string quarterback, a rookie drafted in, I believe, it was a 4th round out of USC, starting at quarterback for him. It's definitely a scary situation overall for the Browns here. The guys I'm looking at from this game I'm pretty much looking at Jarvis Landry. He's got a really favorable matchup in the slot. I think he's facing off against Tramon Williams as the slot cornerback for the Cleveland Browns, and he's been just pretty atrocious in the slot for them thus far this year. Landry's a guy who week in and week out is getting at least 9 or 10 targets. He's going to catch 7 of them. He just isn't like a lot of other. The reason his price hovers around 7,000 instead of 8,000 is that his targets aren't as far downfield, and he's catching a lot of the short slants as opposed to the deep post. And he's just not like the same explosive guy as a lot of the other elite receivers in the league. But I think this is a week where you can definitely safely and confidently start him in any and all cash lineups because of just the way this game's going to go. And then the game flow here with the line at -10.5 in favor of Miami, it looks like it's going to be favorable for Jay Ajayi. Personally, I'm not a big fan of him. I want to wait and see him or any other running back in that offense prove to me that they're going to get the lion's share of the carries before I roster them, but he could be a nice little tournament option. And then lastly, there's going to be a lot of chalk on the Miami defense. Pretty much everybody is going to be on any defense facing the Browns until further notice.
Yep. Eric, what do you have from the Fins-Browns game here?
As far as, what's already been said is, Landry is just the obvious play. I think I'm probably 60-70% ownership on Miami. I know they're the chalk, and I'm trying to go higher than the field because of it. I don't know about Ajayi. For all we know, he could be inactive again on Sunday, and they ride Damian Williams and Kenyon Drake.
Yeah.
Because, he's in a doghouse for some reason. We don't really know why, but I don't know. It's just his attitude. So I guess if he is inactive, I think I really like Drake as a sneaky tournament play on sites.
Yeah. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, today they announced Ajayi as the starter, but like you said, he's been in the doghouse ever since he came in the NFL. Wouldn't be surprised at all if it gets maybe like 5 touches and then it's out in the first quarter. But here's the thing, like his value and everything says that the game script, the Dolphins get up, they just start running the ball, they start handing off to the young guy and just giving him touches. It just makes so much sense. But he's been in the doghouse his entire NFL career, his short NFL career, which bodes me to believe that Jarvis Landry is just going to be an extension of the run game, just getting 1 yard, 2 yard passes behind the yard of scrimmage passes the entire game. I like Tannehill in cash. Please speak up if you think I'm wrong here, but I don't like to pay up big time at quarterback. And I'm looking at Tannehill here at 7.4, and I'm like, out of all these guys down here, I think he's maybe the safest play. I mean, obviously, I wish I could play Josh McCown because whenever he starts, he throws for like 300 yards. But in that like 7,000 range, that's the one guy that sparks my attention. Is playing Tannehill in cash crazy? Anyone?
Not at all. I think he's my quarterback in 20 of my 30 FanDuel Survivor teams this week.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I agree with that. Tannehill is not going to be the one in like the bottom quarter of the quarterback output. I don't think at all. I think he's pretty safe play, especially if they get if it's a close game, they're just going to give it to him. There's no running back situation here. Ryan, what do you got for me? Any final thoughts on the Browns Fins game?
No, we pretty much covered everything between us.
Cool. Hopefully Eric unfreezes at some point, but that's okay. We have the 2-0 Baltimore Ravens moving on down to Jacksonville, sitting at 0-2. I believe the line here, I see Jacksonville is favorited by 1. It opened up at a pick'em. It is a 47 over/under here. Kick it off here. I know you got some takes on the Jaguars that you want to point out here before we talk about who you're really going into. What do you got for me?
Yeah, I'm probably between everybody that you'll talk to about daily fantasy sports. I probably hate Allen Hurns more than any of them, and this hatred isn't really unfounded. There's a lot of shit that goes on with Allen Hurns that just irks me beyond belief because he'll disappear for 3 weeks and then he'll catch touchdowns in 7 straight weeks. But when he catches those touchdowns in 7 straight weeks, it's not because like they're fluke touchdowns, to be honest, because last year that Jaguars offense was behind for the majority of every game and they were throwing in the red zone every single week because they didn't have a running game.
Right.
Allen Hurns had 5 or fewer receptions in 14 games last year, which just isn't what you want to see from a wide receiver you're plugging into any lineup, and he just doesn't have the tools with that to produce consistently. Then looking at the other players in this game, because it isn't just Allen Hurns against the Baltimore Ravens. On the Ravens, we were talking about earlier, there's going to be a lot of love for Pitta this week after his explosion last week, and then the big narrative of him and he and Flacco, where they're just best friends and they do everything together and all that. But I'm just not buying into it, quite frankly. That offense does throw a lot, but I'm not confident in being able to pinpoint where the targets are going to go. Then elsewhere on Jacksonville, I'm a big fan of Allen Robinson this week. If they're able to keep him on the opposite side of the field from Jimmy Smith, I think he explodes for 100+ and maybe multiple touchdowns this week. I think it could be a monster breakout week for him, even if he is matched up on Jimmy Smith. Jimmy Smith is an average to above average cornerback, but I think Allen Robinson's talent just surpasses him in most every facet of the game. So I'm looking at Allen Robinson mainly for my only DFS contributor from this game that I'll be confident to roster.
Eric, what is your takeaway from this Jags-Ravens game? You there, Eric?
Guess not.
It's not. All right, that's all right. But we'll start with quarterbacks. Blake Bortles on FanDuel is 7.9. I don't think you can go wrong with that, honestly, if you want to go for that in cash game or tournament. I think he has a great game anyway. This game's going to be airing the ball out all game, in my opinion. Ravens' rushing attack is completely confusing. And I'm really not a fan of T.J. Yeldon and Chris Ivory, especially now that Chris Ivory is back. Moving to the wide receivers, yeah, Allen Robinson at 7.9. If you got the if you got the price for him, go for it. I like him as well. Don't hate Mike Wallace in a GPP again. I feel like him and Flacco needed the guy to go down the field with. and he lacked that last year. And now he's got a guy that strictly goes down the field and catches long balls. And I think that bodes well for both players here. Flacco in a tournament's not a terrible idea either. Out of the other wide receivers, you could be that guy and play Allen Hurts in the GPP, but as Ryan mentioned, 5 catches or less in 14 of his games last year. That's not a lot for cash games, and you're looking at him at 6.5, and it seems juicy, but it's not as juicy as it seems. I also like Julius Thomas in a GPP as well. He's shown what he showed back on his former team in these last couple games. Last year, he was kind of a bust for everyone. He's a hell of an athlete and can move across the field and cause some matchup problems. Don't hate him. But when you move on to Dennis Pitta, and he's 5K, and you seem like the Joe Flacco love story, you can toss him right into your cash game lineup and just roll with it. You're saving value at tight end. Although I think there are better pivots from that move specifically we can get into later. Kicker defense, whatever. If you play who you like at kicker defense in this game, I don't mind the Jags kicker. I think this game is going to be kind of a shootout. So if you want to toss in Jason Myers at 4.5 and save some cash, FanDuel, go on right ahead. Any final thoughts from this game?
No, I don't really like much else from this game. I think we're ready to move on and address the next situation.
Yeah, none of these games thus far either I have picks on gambling for. This is a bit of a weird week for me, but specifically in that Jags game, I am leaning towards the Jags. I think the Jags get this one at home here. I don't think the Ravens are going to shut out this year 3-0. They're not that talented enough. Stay tuned on my Twitter account and our website, settingtheedge.weebly.com, for some more picks. We'll have those all out Saturday and Sunday morning for you guys. Moving on to the next game, the Detroit Lions, 1-1, going on over to Green Bay to play the Packers. I see Green Bay here at a -7 favorite. They have the highest team total as well. I believe it's at 27 and a half-ish. And the over-under in this game is 47. What do you like from this game, Ryan?
In this game, I'm looking at Green Bay, and everybody, I guess not everybody, but most people look at Aaron Rodgers and they realize that he just hasn't been the same guy since about week 6 of last year, and he hasn't put up his elite quarterback ratings. He hasn't put up his 300-yard games, and he just hasn't been the same guy. And I was reading an article today that really went into how his mechanics have just left him. He just isn't as focused on the mechanics, and when he's not mechanically sound is when he's missing his throws, and he's doing it way more often now than ever. Guy that I really like from Green Bay, my sneaky GPP play of the week is Eddie Lacy. I feel like he's going to be low owned because not a lot of people ever really look to Eddie Lacy and think explosiveness, GPP, plug him and play him. But here, looking at the front 7 of Detroit against the front 5 for Green Bay, along with Jared Cook, who's one of the best run blocking tight ends in the game, I think Eddie Lacy has the ability this week to really bust out and go for 100 in the score. Maybe not in cash game because he's definitely one of the riskier plays. And then on the other side of the ball for Detroit, the only really guy I'm looking at is Theo Riddick on DraftKings, and I'll hand that one off to you.
Yeah, I am a huge Theo Riddick advocate on FanDuel. He's had the most receptions for a running back in the last 2 years. He gets a ton of red zone targets as well. They just signed him to this extension. And then Amir Abdullah goes down. What a perfect situation to toss in Theo Riddick at 6.4 on FanDuel into your cash lineups. Yeah, he's going to be chalky, but his floor is right where you want a running back at that price to be. And he shows upside as well if he gets into the end zone. You never really know with that Lions offense, especially, they haven't necessarily shown who they're really going to go with all the time. But I like Theo Riddick, especially if the Packers are up and they just need to get some yardage and try to get some garbage time points. What better situation for Matt Stafford to just dump off some passes to Theo Riddick all game. On the wide receiver side of things, love me some Jordy Nelson this week. Love Jordy Nelson this week. Think he's starting to get back into his stride. He will never be the same Jordy Nelson, but I think Aaron Rodgers and him as a stack, obviously, is perfectly fine, and I'm a fan of that in cash. That's currently what I have going with me right now in majority of my lineups. But I think Aaron Rodgers and Jordy Nelson get back on the same page. Not a huge Cobb guy whatsoever. And stay the hell away from Devontae Adams. Stop picking him. I don't understand people who do. And then Marvin Jones, he's the guy. Price still hasn't caught up for him. He's at 6.9K on FanDuel. And looking at tournaments, if you want to play Ebron, go on ahead. I like so many different more tight ends than him. Eric, what do you got for us here in the Detroit Green Bay game?
Well, I actually am a bigger fan of Cobb than Jordy this week, only because of him playing in the slot.
Okay.
Darius Slay going up against Jordy on the outside, especially when Jordy's not the Jordy we're used to seeing.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I live in Packer country, but with the issues that are going on with the offense, I want to stay away. But the Green Bay's got a team total of 27.5. It's going to be tough for me to stay away.
Yeah, that's the problem I'm running into right now. Like, if I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. I really hate paying up for the quarterback, but I'm sitting in my lineup with Aaron Rodgers right now, and I'm trying to find ways to get him out. But this seemed just so perfect for an Aaron Rodgers game to break out. What is it? His last 10 games or so, he hasn't had a QBR rating of over 100. It's been ridiculous, honestly. I just don't understand what's going on with him. And this seems more of like a perfect situation, perfect storm for him to have a breakout game. Ryan, do you have anything else on this game for me?
No, I think you guys really brought up some good points with Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb. With Darius Slay on the outside, that's going to scare a lot of people off of Jordy Nelson. So that might make him a more viable GPP play, and then Randall Cobb a much safer cash game play.
Right. Any last thoughts from you, Eric?
No. I'm going to be I kind of cut in and out, but I'm going to use Theo Riddick almost as he's a wide receiver in a lot of my stacks for the game itself.
Yeah, that's where I stand with you. I'm a big Theo Riddick fan. I don't really have a play on any of these gambling lines either. Green Bay -7. Not confident enough to bet on the Packers, and as I told you guys, I lose every time I bet on the Packers. And the over/under, I think it lands right at 47, so I'm just going to stay away from it. Moving on to the next game, something that's not really a big highlight for me in fantasy whatsoever, to be honest. You guys may have some different takes. Denver Broncos moving on out to the Bengals. Cincinnati is 3.5 point favorites right now, and a low over/under here at 42. Eric, is there anything you'd like to highlight in this game?
C.J. Anderson. That's basically it for me.
Yeah, you honestly I don't think you can go wrong with playing him whenever you want. He is the offense right now because with Simeon out there, it just really doesn't look like Sanders and Thomas are going to really light up the scoreboard here. And it's not even not even a good enough ceiling to play them in a GPP, honestly. And at 8K on FanDuel, what is he on DraftKings? He's 7.3. Both are. That's not. You're not breaking the bank with these guys realistically. I mean, a little more on DraftKings than you are on FanDuel because you're, cut for price a bit with the flex spot. But you can't really go wrong with him. If you want to play him, go right on ahead. I might be looking elsewhere, but if I have that value, I'm just going to stick him right on in there. Maybe the defense is in this game. I'm looking elsewhere too. Ryan, what are your thoughts on this game?
I don't like anything about this game. I'm not going to be touching this game at all for daily fantasy. However, I do like Denver's defense a lot, so much so that I might consider Denver +3, but I'm probably not going to be betting it. That's everything I got.
Yeah, I'm kind of agreeing with you there. But you kind of know where I stand with this Andy Dalton playing the 1:00 Sunday game where no one's watching him, and then all of a sudden he lights it up. So I kind of want to stay away from that. Eric, do you have any gambling perspective or any final thoughts on this game?
Gambling wise, I lean to take Denver plus the points just because of their defense. I will use some of their defense in places just because they helped me out a ton last weekend. Fantasy-wise, when nobody was on them. And I guess the way the Bengals' offense is one-dimensional right now, and that dimension just happens to play into the Broncos' backfield strength. I think they could have another solid game. I obviously don't think they're going to score a couple defensive touchdowns, but
yeah, we were all blessed last week. I had them in my GPP lineup, and I just kind of shot up the rankings when they just started racking in those touchdowns. I did pretty well in that GPP as well. I had the Matt Ryan stacked with like Tammy and whatnot. I just tossed a bunch of things together. It's pretty cool. But yeah, I'm probably gonna stay away from this game completely betting. I'm not really a fan of it. Moving on to your boys, Eric. We got the Vikings heading out to play the Panthers. The line right now I see is Carolina 7.5 or 7 favorites -7. The over under here at 43. I'm leaning the over here. I'm going to start by saying that. But Eric, well, talk about your boys. How do you think this game's going to play out here?
I think they're in trouble. Matt Khalil hasn't been all that great, but losing him to IR as well, their offensive line's been pretty bad as it is, and now it just gets worse. And I don't remember the exact stat on it, but Bradford had the most, there's like second or third most pressures on him last week. He just happens to have a really quick release. But then you add in that Diggs is dealing with a groin injury as well. I'm actually starting to fire up a lot more Panthers defense.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking at right now. I think a good tight end pivot is kind of paying up for Greg Olsen and Reed this week, since there's so many guys in the lower value tier that everyone's going to be hopping on. So I kind of like going with that. I don't hate Kelvin Benjamin either. With the Panthers not having real running attack, with Jay Stu out for multiple weeks, and they're going to go with Fozzie Whitaker, Cameron Payne, and big fat Tolbert. And I don't really like the Minnesota running backs yet. I don't know who to trust yet. We've seen Asiata go off. I've seen Jerick McKinnon do things. Is there any perspective you have regarding the running back situation here, Eric?
I wish I could. I'm seeing a lot of 60-40 split in McKinnon's favor. Obviously, that's going to be game flow dependent. I think McKinnon's going to see more touches than 60% this week, just because I think they're going to be dumping it off to him and then some Kyle Rudolph.
Yeah.
I really don't see Asiata getting much for goal line carries, because I just don't think the Vikings are going to be at the goal line. They're going to have to score on some long play, or even if it's special teams with Cordero Patterson, or even defense, I guess. But I'm pretty much all Panthers. Benjamin and Olsen for sure. I always throw a tight end in a stack with Cam somewhere, just because of his deep ball ability.
Yep.
And I don't mind Cameron Artis-Payne. I know it's shocking to say, but his price is just so low. FS industry, that I can see you getting away with plugging him in, just because he showed the ability to take over the every down back last year when Stewart was hurt as well. So
yeah, I agree with you there. Ryan, what do you have for me for this game here?
This game I don't really like anything all that much. I was a big proponent for Stephon Diggs before the groin injury concerns, where he wasn't practicing and watching practice in a hoodie the past couple days. That was really the only guy I was looking towards. Cameron Artis-Payne, low-owned, low-priced option this week. Fozzie Whitaker, I feel like, might get some of the uneducated ownership from people just looking at last week's stat line and plugging him in, but they activated Cameron Artis-Payne specifically to be the number one this week. I don't really like anything else. I think guys pretty much touched on everything.
Yeah, I went ahead and picked up Jerick McKinnon in my season-long leagues. So happened to be I had AP in 3 out of my 6, and I had Danny Woodhead in 4 of my 6. So things weren't going too well for me. I had to hit the waiver wire hard. But realistically, you might win a GPP with someone in this game, but cash game-wise, Panthers defense doesn't seem like a bad option. I don't think Sammy Sleeves is going to be able to do much as he did last week for the Vikings, in my opinion. Game kind of stinks. I think, and gambling-wise, whatever. I'm out on this game. There's not a lot of lines this week. I'm really all aboard necessarily. Let's move on to another 1 o'clock game here. Keep pushing through this. Skins at the Giants. Giants are 3.5 favorites. Over/under here is 45.5. We got the Josh Norman OBJ matchup we've all been waiting for. I'm sure I'll be paying a lot of attention from that. Other than OBJ and maybe a little bit of Sterling Shepard from the Giants, in my perspective, and then I love Jordan Reed. I think he's my tight end this week. Ryan, what do you got for me for the Skins-Giants game?
I'm really just gonna be sitting back and watching and just soaking in the Josh Norman Odell Beckham Jr. matchup. And then you mentioned the Jordan Reed play is going to be the big play of the game. He's going to be the main producer from the entire matchup here. I think he might come out of the entire game as the high scorer among everybody. I'm not really a fan of either quarterback, either running back, or I guess Sterling Shepard. If I'm really looking to the game and wondering if their Giants are going to move Odell Beckham into the slot to keep him away from Josh Norman, because that's where the Redskins' main defense is in the secondary, is in that slot position. If they keep him on the outside, which I can't really understand why they would do that, but I guess it's feasible that they would, then I like Sterling Shepard in that slot a lot. I guess I would have to wait and see if maybe something comes out where they say that they're going to use Odell in the slot or they're not going to. But I can't bank on either of those at this very moment.
Eric, what do you got for me for this game?
Well, I'm trying to use a little more Odell than I originally had thought, just because that his final numbers last year against Norman when they got into the nice fight weren't all that great. But thinking more, you have to remember he also dropped 2 wide open touchdowns where he had Norman beat pretty badly. And then obviously because of that, I am actually considering Eli, partially just because he pissed the whole DFS community off last weekend with such a terrible performance in a game that should have been, 35-30 or something.
Yep.
And then, I don't mind using Victor Cruz, but the one guy in this game that you guys haven't mentioned that I am going to have a decent amount and is Jamison Crowder. He's getting quite a bit of looks in the red zone out of the slot for the Skins. And it sounds like Josh Doxson got hurt again. So we should see Crowder out there for 80 to 85% of the snaps.
Yeah, especially if Deshaun Jackson, still hobbled with that ankle injury. Jamison Crowder at 5K on FanDuel. What is he over on DraftKings? He's 3.8 on DraftKings. Wow. Yeah, he's a guy that definitely under the radar for a lot of people, but he's getting the red zone targets. Kirk Cousins hasn't gotten it going yet, and maybe this is the game he does. He's looked like shit to me, honestly. But I like. What's your thoughts on Victor? Does anyone have a thought on Victor Cruz, or is it more everyone's on Shepard?
I'm on Shepard.
Because if Shepard is in the slot, that means Cruz is on the outside against Breland, and Breland struggled quite a bit to start the year out. So I like Cruz. Obviously, probably not as much as I like Shepard overall, but I can definitely see using him, especially if you want to save the money.
Right.
Where he's in places where he's decently cheaper than Shepard. I don't have a problem going down to him.
Yeah, no problem with him there, especially in a GPP play. I guess if anything, I'm leaning the under in this game. Honestly, it could get really ugly. Maybe the Giants' offense isn't what it seemed, and with Rashad Jennings having the arm injury, I'm not all aboard Shane Vereen yet. I know in year-long leagues people are looking to fill their bench with him, but other than that, I think that concludes this game for the most part. Moving on to the 4 o'clock games. Keep pushing on through this. We got the Rams heading on over to Tampa Bay to play the Bucks. Bucks are 5-point favorites right now with a low over-under here at 42.5. Austin Severian-Jenkins just got a DUI this morning and has been kicked off the team, which is furthering my love for Mike Evans this week. Eric, what do you got for me in this Rams-Buccaneers game?
I am using some Buccaneers defense, which I never thought I would say I'm doing. Also using some Charles Sims. I don't really know how much I want to use yet, just because I just don't know what he's going to be like as an every down back. That's pretty much it. I don't like Gurley. I've seen a lot of people, some bigger touts within the industry, talk about Gurley, and they have him as their number 1 or number 2 running back for the weekend, and I just don't see it with Tampa Bay's defense.
Mm-hmm.
I may look at Tavon Austin a little bit. I did see a stat that Tampa Bay's defense has allowed running backs to catch, something like 16 or 17 passes already this year. And since the Rams don't really have a receiving running back, I could see them using Austin out of the backfield to get him some touches.
Yeah, he's the guy. He's pretty much the only spark and explosion in that offense. I don't because the Buccaneers favors their defensive line in front seven. Their run defense is pretty formidable. I am completely off Gurley, but Eric, I did hear the same rumblings about Gurley being the number one back, and I don't want any part of it, honestly. I like that Bucks pick though for defense. LA LA's maybe scored one touchdown this year.
They have not scored any touchdowns yet.
No touchdowns this year. All right, so yeah, screw that. They have 12 points this year. Is that what it is? They had 3 the first game and 9 the next game.
They didn't score week 1.
They didn't score week 1. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. I bet on the Rams week 1. So that's a Jimbo on me. But if you want to toss a GPP together with Tavon Austin and the Rams defense, go for it. He's gonna break one out one of these games. But this game, you can never predict it. But all I'm looking at in this game is Evans. I'm not as big on Charles Sims personally. I'm looking at Theo Riddick more. But if you want, I don't know. I'm not a believer in Sims yet. You got to show me before I'm gonna hop in on him. I'm a little sketched out on that. Ryan, what are your thoughts? Any final thoughts on this game?
Do you think that Charles Sims could be a quality, low-owned, low-priced guy this week? The Rams' defense last week looked pretty good, but albeit it was against an atrocious Seattle offensive line. Pro Football Focus has them graded absurdly low across the board, except for at the center position. Week 1, they got pretty much carved up by Carlos Hyde, got whatever he wanted. But then again, that was also the best week 1 running back of all time in Carlos Hyde. I really, really like Mike Evans this week. I think he had some 17 targets last week.
Yep, 17.
Absolutely ridiculous. Without Doug Martin in the game, he looks to a lot more, and then the Rams secondary just isn't that good. I think it's Cody Skandrick, I believe his name is, or Sensible it might be. He is just atrocious, and whichever wide receiver gets matched up on him is going to go off, and I hope that Tampa Bay is smart enough to make that Mike Evans.
Yep. I don't mind Jameis Winston in a GPP. Week 1, he was one of the top guys for big winners. I think he's a sneaky pick because the general consensus is to stay away from playing against the Rams defense in general. But I think I'm leaning Tampa Bay -5 in this game, to be real honest with you. LA can't score. I think Tampa Bay at least puts up 3 touchdowns in this game. Next game we got Jets, Chiefs. I think this game stinks. I like one play. I think I like one play. I like Eric Decker a little bit. That's one of my big points if you want, Larry Fitzgerald versus Eric Decker. But Brandon Marshall being kind of hobbled scares me a little bit. But I love the fact that Eric Decker is on the outside now. He's a decent down the field threat. But in tournaments, I love me some Alex Smith, and I love me some Jeremy Maclin combinations. Maybe tossing a little bit of Travis Kelce. Other than that, I'm staying away from this game in cash. But I've heard a couple hot takes today say that this might be the highest scoring game overall, which is not that surprised about, to be honest. But in cash game, I'm staying away, except maybe a little bit of Eric Decker action. He gets a touchdown every fucking game. There's nothing I can do about it. I swear, he's going to get a touchdown. I'm not going to play him. He's going to get a touchdown. I play him. He doesn't. But he's the guy down there. Fitz loves him. Eric, any thoughts on this Jets-Chiefs game?
Quincy Enunwa. That's kind of who I'm going with in spots, just because the Jets really don't run out a tight end. Enunwa's big enough to be a tight end pretty much, but he has been a down the field threat and has really stepped in, shown some rapport with Fitzpatrick. So I like him quite a bit, especially if Marshall hobbled a bit, and obviously Decker is he's so consistent. I don't think this is a week that I'm going to get on Forte. They are giving him all the touches he can handle, but at some point, it's going to break him down a little bit. And for the Chiefs, I like Macklin quite a bit. I think I'm probably going to use a little bit of Spencer Ware yet, but I have to try to get clarification on Jamal Charles because I've seen he's doubtful today. Then I've seen he's leaning towards playing, and I guess I don't really know what the official word is on if he's going to be back or not.
Yeah, and especially with the NFL changing, probable, questionable, doubtful, it's really completely confusing. He's doubtful right now, but he very well could play. And the Jets are, a funnel defense. They want you to throw the ball on them. Instead of Revis Island, it's like Revis Resort, and he's getting burnt. So I do like the Chiefs pass offense and GPP. I think Spencer Ware could be a contributor to that. Ryan, do you have any final thoughts in this game?
I really like the Quincy Enunwa selection. I think he could be a guy who definitely low ownership, just consistent production, little Eric Decker light, because all this guy does is in his first 2 games, he just catches 6-7 passes and goes for 90 yards and maybe gets in the end zone. They don't run out of tight end, as Eric noted, and he's really playing that tight end role out of the slot for them. And then Eric Decker, just king consistency. That's pretty much everything I got.
Yeah, I live with a Jets fan, and he's a big Quincy Enunwa advocate. And Eric, like you said, if Brandon Marshall is continuously – well, the reports say he's still hurt going into the game. I'm going to like him even more. And if he's out, I think I'm locking him in at $6K in cash game. I'll eat the chalk on that. Or actually, maybe the chalk will go to Decker, and I'll be able to pivot off that with Enunwa. But they don't play a tight end like you mentioned. I like his ability to go across the field. It's something that we can definitely keep an eye out, definitely down the field later this season. A game that everyone loves. Everyone's looking at, and everyone might be a little confused about who they're going to go with in this game here. San Diego Chargers 1-1, going to play the Indianapolis Colts 0-2. Indianapolis is 2.5-point favorites right now, and the over/under is a nice 51.5. The highest of the Sunday games. And as I mentioned earlier, we already know what's happening with that Falcons-Saints game. Ryan, what do you got for me?
I'm sorry, it cut out. What game are we talking about here?
Chargers Colts here.
All right, this game, I'm not really a fan of any Indianapolis wide receiver here, mostly because Jason Verrett is subtly one of the most talented cornerbacks in the league, and then Brandon Flowers has been playing really well this year as well. So I'm not liking any of their wide receiver threats, and then Frank Gore, I just can't bring myself to roster. He's at the end of the year, you're going to look at his stat line, he's going to have 1,000 yards, but he's going to have 0 weeks when you plug him into your daily fantasy lineup. The one big guy who I just can't pass up in any situation that anybody could ever dream up is Melvin Gordon. Danny Woodhead going down bodes even better for him. He's already been playing the best football of his short NFL career this season, getting in the end zone each of the first 2 weeks. And then just the vast difference between the Chargers' offensive line performance thus far this year and then the Colts' front seven performance is just the biggest extreme that you could draw up. So I'm all aboard the Melvin Gordon train this week, and I will happily choke on all of that chalk.
Yep, Eric, what do you got for me in this game? San Diego and Colts.
Well, I mean, like, to follow up on the Melvin Gordon, I was all in on him, and I'm in, I don't know, 6 season-long leagues plus then all the My Fantasy League basketball. I drafted him everywhere. He spent the offseason with AP down in Houston, working out at his gym. I basically pushed everything in, and now, I've reaped the rewards the first couple of weeks, but now he's going to be the chalk for the foreseeable future. I don't think this is a matchup that I can get off of him yet, but when it comes to the passing offense, I am going to use a little bit of T.Y. Hilton out of the slot. I do have some Philip Dorsett just because he's so cheap. But this is a week I kind of look for Dwayne Allen to get back on the good side of things. Because San Diego is susceptible to the tight end. And I know Doyle's gotten a lot of looks to start out the year, but I just have a feeling that Dwayne Allen's going to have a big game at some point. And it certainly could be this week. As far as San Diego's pass offense, I have a decent amount of Travis Benjamin, but I have more Tyrell Williams. I guess maybe it's just because I'm so used to seeing Travis Benjamin with the Browns, and he just had been just a deep threat and deep threat only. And Phillip Rivers likes to just get rid of the ball quickly. And obviously Tyrell's quite a bit cheaper on most sites as it is.
Yeah, all your points I'm pretty much with. I think Dwayne Allen gets himself out of the doghouse a little bit. Maybe he's the guy that gets the touchdown. With Moncrief being out, what is it, 4 to 6 weeks or so. I just have a bad taste in my mouth with one Tavis Benjamin and two T.Y. Hilton. I can never get a game right with them. So if I'm looking at the Chargers wide receiver, I'm definitely looking at Tyrell Williams and then maybe a little bit of Philip Dorsett if I'm really looking down that cheap. But at that value point, I'd rather just go down to Jamison Crowder, I think, as we mentioned earlier. If you're out of the rest of this game, if you want cheap exposure to this game, I like Josh Lambo, kicker for the San Diego Chargers. But, kickers and defenses is a crapshoot pretty much every time. I just like to play like a cheap point in that. And that's pretty much it from that game. If I'm anything, I'm leaning Chargers plus 2.5. I don't think the Colts are going to win, personally. Next game we have Steelers, Eagles, 2-0, both teams 2-0, the Battle of Pennsylvania here. Pittsburgh's favored by 3.5. A decent over/under 46.5. Not too shabby. Ryan, let's talk about your Birds.
I'm ecstatic about what's going on so far this season for them. Going into this week, though, I'm a little bit worried. I can't lie. Antonio Brown is he's the cream of the crop in the NFL. You can compare anybody you want to him, and he matches up against anybody, and he probably wins any matchup. And then the Eagles secondary just isn't that good. You got Nolan Carroll, and then you got 7th-round pick in Jalen Mills, and then you got Ron Brooks coming in, and it seems like he can toast any one of them whenever he wants. Looking at Philadelphia, over on DraftKings, Trey Burton is $2,500. I believe that's the absolute minimum price that DraftKings will put somebody at. I could be wrong, but
2.5, yep.
I just can't pass that up in any lineup because with Zach Ertz being out, they just love tight ends in the Doug Peterson branch off of Andy Reid offense, and Brent Selleck just isn't the same player he used to be, and they just can't rely on him to be on the field for a majority of the snaps. Trey Burton saw 5 receptions on 7 targets and a score last week. Maybe he doesn't get that score this week, but then still he would have put up 9 points. I love him on DraftKings, and then I'm still a big fan of him on FanDuel, just not as big without the full PPR. And then also with the minimum price being a little bit higher. And then I also think Carson Wentz could be a sneaky tournament play because Pittsburgh's pass defense has subtly been very subpar. Individually, the players grade out pretty well, but they've just allowed some pretty big numbers, except for last week in that rainy matchup against Cincinnati. So I think Carson Wentz could be a sneaky play. And then I like Trey Burton, along with Jesse James on the other side of the ball. He's going to be the chalk play of the week at tight end again. And then, of course, Antonio Brown.
Eric, what do you got for me for this Eagles-Steelers game?
I'm using a bit of Jordan Matthews just because his targets are there. And then, obviously, I'm not touching anybody in the Eagles running game just because they're spreading it around to 4 guys right now. As far as the Steelers, I'm a huge Steeler fan for fantasy purposes. So I always stack their offense every single week. So I'm going to have quite a bit of D'Angelo, Antonio Brown, Jesse James, and then I'll have some Eli Rogers as well. Because Black came out after last week saying that they need to get him more involved because he only finished with 1 catch for 7 or 9 yards or whatever it was last weekend. So I kind of look for him to kind of step up. I'm just not a big fan of Marcus Wheaton, so I don't really think he's going to bring a ton, and I think Ben's going to kind of trust Eli Rogers a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I'm not really a huge advocate of paying up for Antonio Brown at 9.5 on FanDuel and then 9.6 on DraftKings. I think you can just save a little money elsewhere. If he goes off, I'll live with it. But and same goes with D'Angelo Williams. I like to pivot to David Johnson a little bit more on both sites. He'll probably have a good game, but I'm all right with staying off of him. But Jesse James probably might be my tight end if I'm not, going with Jordan Reed or like a Greg Olsen-ish kind of guy. And if I'm leaning anything in this game, I'm leaning Pittsburgh, I think. There are 2 games we didn't touch upon here in the show. San Francisco and Seattle. I just don't really see enough value in that game specifically to talk about with cash games. I don't really have a read on it either. As goes with Chicago and Dallas. Maybe a little more on Dallas' side of things. But the Bears offense, the entire offensive line is not going to be playing, and they're going to be a pitiful team. Maybe if you want to toss some Dallas players in like a tournament, maybe Zeke has a decent game. Cole Beasley's cheap, but besides from that, I don't really have any players in either of those games that I'm really targeting. Did you guys have any thoughts on those games you'd like to talk about quickly?
No, I don't like anything from either of those games. I don't really have any talking points.
Eric, what about you?
I'll go Christian Michael and the Seahawks defense as a combo. I write a stacks article over for DFS Report each week, and I talk quite a bit about running back defense stacking, the positive correlation. So I do like Michael just because, one big thing is because of the number of plays the offense is going to see because of the Chip Kelly 49ers offense, the up-tempo. Seattle's going to see a 15% boost in their plays for the game. So that's pretty much one of the only reasons why I'm on anybody. Tyler Lockett's always possible just because I like to pair him with Seattle's defense as well because of his punt returning ability.
Yep.
As far as the Cowboys and Bears, I am going to be using a decent amount of Cowboys sprinkled throughout things, whether it be the Cowboys defense, even though they haven't been all that stellar yet this year. That Bears offense is just pretty bad right now, and I'm hearing that Jeffrey might not even play. So if he's out, then I don't really see the Bears moving the ball at all. I'm a fan of Dak and for fantasy purposes, and I know a lot of people are complaining because he's not throwing touchdown passes. Last week he threw for 290 some yards and then had a rushing score. So he finished, on fantasy draft. So same thing as DraftKings. He had 18 plus points for his price point, which isn't absolutely terrible. Now, if he add in a passing touchdown or two here or there, all of a sudden he shoots to the mid-20s. It's kind of a good score to get for his price point. So, I will pair him with some Dez in a couple places because it looked like they kind of got on the same page a little bit more last week. So I'm kind of expecting them to kind of build on that. And, at some point, Dez is going to have a pretty big game, and the entire Bears defense is just hurt, I guess, right now. So I always like having the hammer. The last game of the weekend or the slate or whatever we're playing, always want to have guys playing in that. I'd rather shoot up the leaderboard than watch myself just drop uncontrollably.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. There are some, I guess, out of the two games we just mentioned, I like the defense running back stack. I am a personal fan of that. I think I might be leaning more towards the Cardinals David Johnson stack personally, but I do like I like the Seahawks defense through and through. And then there is definitely guys on Dallas you can go with. They're favored by 7.5 for a reason here. I might be leaning taking the Cowboys as one of my picks. But that's going to wrap up everything from us here today on Setting the Edge. Are there any final points that Eric or Ryan that you'd like to throw out there before I go ahead and close up the show here?
No, I feel like we touched upon everything notable that I could envision happening this weekend.
Eric, any last takes? And then go ahead and close yourself out here. Plug all the stuff you need to plug.
Yes, we pretty much said everything. It definitely at some point these high projected scoring games are going to actually finish that way, and all the fantasy goodness are going to come from them. So at that rate, I would expect that Indy and San Diego and then Green Bay to put up a ton of points this weekend.
Yep, I'm with you there. And we also didn't mention, the Falcons-Saints game with the over-under at 54.5. If that game doesn't, hit around that over/under, then next week we got to bang the big overs. But that's all from us here on Setting the Edge show. Thank you, Eric, for coming on the podcast with us. It's been great. You can find him at Razzle11Grinds on Twitter. I'm joined with my co-host, as always, Ryan Zamichelli. You can find him at The Great Zambino, and the is spelled with an A. And I am Ronnie Vaughn. You can find me on Twitter at VaughnR16. Make sure you follow the podcast as well at SettingTheEdge_ on Twitter. You can find us on our website. Our website is settingtheedge.weebly.com. We have picks up there for college and NFL. And occasionally we'll toss in an occasional article when Ryan and I have the time to provide that to you. But if you're on Twitter, you'll be getting insight from us through and through, whoever is near and watching the games and discussing what is going on. Any final words, Ryan?
Nope, that's everything.
All right, thanks for tuning in, guys. I'd love to hear from you guys. Tweet us out on Twitter. Give us follows. Subscribe on YouTube. And best of luck in all your fantasy sport endeavors and gambling. Ryan, have a good night, sir.
You too.